I'm Brendan Vaughn, editor-in-chief of Fast Company, and welcome to Office Hour, my show about what it takes to lead in a world that never stops changing. Hollywood talent agencies have evolved far beyond the Michael Ovitz era, Ari from Entourage, and the whole mailroom-to-boardroom archetype. Today, they're billion-dollar cultural powerhouses, navigating AI transformation, creator economies, and the convergence of entertainment, sports, and corporate strategy. David Kramer embodies this evolution. He started in UTA's mailroom in 1992, when it was a 50-person literary agency, and has spent 34 years at the company. He's about to celebrate his one-year anniversary as CEO. Under Kramer's leadership, UTA has radically diversified beyond traditional film and television representation, which he says now comprises just 40% of the business, compared to 95% 15 years ago. The agency's portfolio spans pop music giants like Bad Bunny and John Legend, LeBron James and other athletes via its Klutch Sports division, digital native creators like Alex Cooper and Mr. Beast, and corporate advisory for Coca-Cola, Google, and other brands. This transformation reflects a broader industry shift where creators want traditional entertainment opportunities and legacy talent seeks digital platforms. Basically, everybody wants a piece of what everyone else is doing. It's a complex convergence, and Kramer is right in the middle of it. Here's my conversation with UTA CEO David Kramer. Hey, everybody. I am here today with David Kramer, CEO of UTA, United Talent Agency, one of the big Hollywood agencies, which has come to mean something very different in recent years. These agencies have branched out and started to do all kinds of different things that go well beyond what we think of when we think of sort of the Hollywood image of a Hollywood agent. So, David, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have followed, speaking of sort of Hollywood archetypes, the classic sort of mailroom to boardroom path that has been immortalized in lots of films and books and articles over the years. You sort of embody that. Give us the capsule history of your time at the agency.
Yes, I have had a very interesting and straight line story. I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida, where most successful Hollywood executives
the
come
hotbed
from.
of Tallahassee. Absolutely.
I went to undergrad at University of Georgia, majored in journalism, and had an interest
Go
in—
Dogs.
Thank you very much. Had an interest in the entertainment business, film and television specifically. I always loved the theater. I loved reading. But I didn't know what that really meant. But I heard about these things called film schools. And so I was lucky enough. I applied to USC grad school, to the Peter Stark motion picture producing program. It got me out to LA. It got me to learn about the jobs. I started reading the trades. And it seemed to me that a lot of successful people in Hollywood, whether they were agents or not agents, had started their careers in agency mailroom. So I looked at this agency mailroom opportunity as sort of the next step for me out of grad school. I joined UTA in the mailroom.
What year was this?
This was summer of 1992. Okay. So I'm about to celebrate my 34th year at the agency. The company—
This has been the only place you ever worked.
Yes, the company was about a year old. It was referred to at that point as a boutique literary agency with about 50 people. We were all on one floor. By the end of the first week, I had met everybody. And working in the mailroom, you really learn the guts of the business. You learn certainly who's who around the building, and you do all the stuff that you would think. Back when there was mail, I sorted and delivered mail. I sent faxes. I copied scripts. I fixed the copy machine pretty much 2 or 3 times a day. And I filled up some cars with gas, and I got some dry cleaning, all the classic stuff you
Did you have anything
heard about.
thrown at you?
I can't talk about whether or not anything was ever thrown at me.
All right.
Nothing ever connected, though.
I'm pulling out all the Hollywood cliches here in this interview, so apologies in advance.
Yeah. So I and then I got out of the mailroom, and like most of us, then started as an assistant on an agent's desk, and after about a year of that, worked for another agent, and then eventually got promoted to what they called then junior agent. Now they're called coordinators.
Coordinators. Okay. So that mailroom path, that still exists? I mean, are there people entering the mailroom right now that are going to run agencies someday?
Yes, we get thousands and thousands of applications for our mailroom every year.
It's an incredibly durable thing that is very specific to your business.
Well, you can't really major in being an agent in school, right? So if you want to be in the agency, the way to enter is through the mailroom. It's proven to be a pretty good resource of recruitment for the agency. About half our partnership now started in the agency mailroom. Like I said, you learn the business. You then become an assistant in different verticals. When I started, there were only a couple on the film and television side. And then you learn the business, you learn who the clients are, and you work your way up from there.
So we're going to get into all kinds of detail here and sort of especially how you lead the agency, how AI affects the work that you're doing, both like internally and also the work that your clients are doing and sort of the opportunities and challenges that it represents, how it affects the labor situation in Hollywood, and, especially how UTA makes money in new ways these days by working with different kinds of clients, the creator business, which you guys are leading in. So I say this to the listener is just, this is going to be the subject of our conversation. So we're going to back into all that. But the first thing or the second thing I want to ask you then is, what is the most dramatic change you've seen since beginning your work there 30 plus years ago, and what hasn't changed at all? Maybe we kind of answered the last part there with the mailroom, but is there anything else?
Well, I mean, so much has changed, which is what also makes this business so incredibly exciting. When I started at UTA, we really did only a couple of things. We represented writers, directors, actors, and producers for film and television. So that has expanded in so many different ways. So these agencies, certainly my agency, has grown into representing musicians, athletes, comedians, creators, authors, newscasters, brands. And so the vastness of the platform has grown so dramatically. So you as an agent or executive have to understand how to tap into all those pieces of the company to benefit the clients that you work with. So you have to know more. You have to learn more. In the old days, if you were this kind of agent, that's what you did. And if you were this kind of client, that's what you did. Now all those walls have come down, which makes it more challenging, more exciting, depending who you are and how you look at it. What hasn't changed is all the tenets that made a successful agent have remained the same. Discovery, passion, hard work, entrepreneurial, innovative. And by the way, and working with your colleagues to get the best out of the platform, those are the things that haven't really changed. So you're just now applying a lot of the same principles to working on a much bigger canvas.
Does part of you miss the simplicity of that earlier era? Relative simplicity? Probably didn't seem simple at the time. Nothing seemed simple at the time. Everything always seems there's so much going on. But then you compare that. In my world, magazine editors used to literally edit a magazine. That's all they did.
Right.
Now it's events, awards programs, digital, social, all these things. I love all that, but I also do miss some of that kind of you could put so much into that one thing.
Yeah, and I think it depends on who you're asking. For me, I spent a lot of my life as a kid thinking about what was I going to do when I grow up. And one of my big fears was boredom. I didn't know that many different kinds of jobs, and I looked at a lot of different jobs, and they all seemed kind of boring to me. But what did I know? I've never been bored a day of my life at the company. And so, yes, the simplicity of some of those days sound pretty good on those days where you're really in it, really in the eye of the storm. But I do think it's what has kept me there for almost 34 years. It's what challenges me, and all the new things you have to learn and the new people you have to meet. It makes it really exciting. And like you said, there was never a time where I walked around the agency and I said, what's great about this job is it's simple, it's easy. We always thought it was hard because it is. It's a really exciting and fun, but tough gig. And so you got to really love it. So I love where we are now. I love the complexity of it. I love the challenge of it. And I know there's going to be more changes as the business evolves every step of the way.
So our audience is not, we have Hollywood listeners, of course, in our audience, but our audience is much broader than that. Fast Company is about innovation across the innovation ecosystem. And what I always try to do when I produce any sort of, oversee the production of any of our content, I'm always looking for, connective tissue between industries that might not seem necessarily connected. So that's just set up for something I wanted to ask you, kind of a nuts and bolts, rough out the pie chart of your business right now. How much is film? How much is television? How much is creator, sports, corporate strategy, all the different elements?
So the foundation of the agency was always film and television. That sat at the center of who we are and who we were. I would say 15 years ago, film and television made up about 95% of our business. It's now about 40%. So we've added different verticals between brand advisory, sports, live, which includes music, comedy, and speakers, creators. those are sort of the way the company breaks down now. And, somewhere in the 10 to 15% zone, live a little bit more.
40% for like the legacy core film business, and then 10 to 15 for those other elements.
Yeah, live's a touch bigger between music and comedy and speakers.
And give us just some names of some of the biggest name clients you guys have.
Across the spectrum, we have people like Timothy Chalamet and Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
Chris Pratt.
He was courtside last night. Haven't seen him courtside
he loves the Knicks.
for a while, so we need him there. We need him there.
Keeps himself pretty busy.
Yeah.
Cynthia Erivo. On the music side, Bad Bunny, Karol G, Rosalia, John Legend. On the sports side, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Jalen Hurts. On the brand side, everything from Delta.
And that's through Klutch,
Yes, Klutch Sports, exactly. Yep. On the brand side, it's everything from Delta Airlines, General Motors, Coca-Cola, Eli Lilly, Google. On the creator side, it's everyone from Alex Cooper, who graced the cover, I think, of the magazine last month. Jake Shane.
She's having a dull stretch right now, but yeah. Go on.
Jake Shane, Colin and Samir, Mr. Beast, Dave Portnoy and Barstool Sports. And on the news side, which is something we acquired a business about 10 years ago, a newscasters agency that we've grown quite well. We represent all three of the network news anchors, David Muir, Tony DeCopel, and Tom Yamas,
all of them,
among others. In any sector we're in, we like to think we certainly play at the top level.
And how has your business relationship with your clients changed over the years? There was a fairly standard setup, or at least in the popular understanding of it, percentage-based. We take a commission of what we book for you, right? How has that changed? And if you wouldn't mind touching on where there are differences in each of those buckets that you just roughed out for us.
For the most part, the commission structure remains the same. There are certain sectors driven either by unions, like in sports, where it may not be the traditional 10%, or in publishing or speakers, where it's actually higher than 10%. But agents, for the most part, take 10% of the.
So that has been fairly steady over the decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And then what about in the creator? And we'll get more into the creator stuff, but on the creator side of things, where the way that they make money is different than this actor gets $20 million a movie because they're A-list, whatever. Brands, it's more dynamic, right? I mean, not brands, creators. It's more dynamic where, the audience fluctuates based on their very measurable traffic and exposure and whatever other metrics they are using to kind of evaluate their reach. So has the compensation for that area where you guys are really strong, what's the situation?
The commission structure remains the same. How they make money is, like you said, is all over the map. Sometimes it's brand deals. Other times it's licensing their shows to big platforms. There's lots of different ways for the creators right now to get compensated.
So let's talk about the creator economy in general, the evolution of that over the years. UTA was very early to recognize the potential of this. Feel free to toot your own horn on this. I believe it was 20 years ago now, right? 2006 when you guys first established the creator practice. Another sort of capsule history question for people that might not follow this that closely. How has that evolved? Was the person that sort of proposed this back in 2006 seen as kind of out of their minds for thinking that this had this potential? Obviously now they look very smart. Just walk us through kind of how that's evolved and where you see things today.
The early days of YouTube, we started to see that some young people mostly young people, were putting things on YouTube, and a lot of it was silly cat videos, but there were people who were getting followers. And it's one of those great stories of sometimes through failure you find success. We started a company early on that was going to do short form videos, and in doing so, we started to hire influencers and others to make these short form videos. It was doing pretty well, but then when the economy crashed a couple of years later, we folded it. It didn't seem like it was the right time to raise the money and all those kinds of things.
So this is like 2008, 2009.
Yeah, around 2008, 2009. But what we did do is the people who were working there had learned a lot about this space, the influencer space, and what was going on the internet. We brought some of them back inside. They started representing some of these young people.
And who were some of those people? Do you recall at that moment in time?
I don't want to get the names wrong. So I'm going to hold off on
Okay. Yeah.
Because was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But it taught us early that these people were able to make their own content, get free distribution for their content. And it felt like it was something that was going to continue and only grow because it was the early days. I will tell you, when we started what we then called the influencer division, we were scoffed at. That we were told, how do you make money on the internet? I mean, can you imagine uttering those words today? And we started to sign people before anybody else was doing that. Then within a few years, we started podcast division that also started at first. So it was a bunch of people like us right now talking to each other. And we've seen what's happened to that space. And then thirdly, we acquired a company called Digital Brand Architects, a DBA, which is a management company for digital influencers, creators who focus primarily on women's health, beauty, fitness, fashion, food, parenting. We then put all three of those things together to form our creators group, and we now find ourselves with the largest creators agency group in the world. And we're very, very proud of it. We've learned a lot. We have a real expertise around it. If you name a big creator today, odds are we probably represent them. So we're very excited about the creator space and what we've done there. And it all started with a harebrained idea 20 years ago that turned into a big success story for us.
And had a little hiccup there a couple of years after, but you still had laid the groundwork for resuscitating it sort of when the market improved.
Yes, exactly.
From my view, which is an outsider view of this, it seems like the new way, the creators that have innovated online and figured out new ways to create content, reach audiences, get paid, and the old model are just converging. It feels like sort of the people that creators want a piece of that legacy, like sort of entertainment business, and that legacy entertainment business certainly wants a piece of that creator business. Is that a fair way to kind of sum things up right now, first of all?
Yeah, I think being in the agency business right now is the most exciting time it's ever been to be in the agency business. Like we said, it's more complicated, but the idea that the new and less traditional, like the creators, want to go into the traditional, and we see how the traditional want to go into the new and the less traditional, and we see the musicians wanting to be in movies, and the creators wanted to be in television.
Amy Poehler has a podcast.
Amy Poehler has a podcast, and the comedians want to do movies, and the athletes want to, do endorsements, and they want to do ventures. And so the way, it's like this massive, in a good way, entangled root system that's happening at our agency now, where we not just encourage, we demand that we give clients the benefit of this platform with all these different capabilities. And what's exciting to me is that the clients crave it from any sector, wherever they live. And this new generation of talent wants to play in all these different worlds. And our job and our opportunity is to help them achieve those goals.
But there must be times when, because so much is possible, that people do things that just kind of like, or want to do things that just sort of make no sense, right? Like where, yes, there's all this fluidity and all this kind of moving between worlds, but I'm not expecting you to sit here and say this specific person who I'm going to name made a mistake doing this. But like, what are some common habits or tendencies or desires that you see among your clients, maybe that really make a lot of sense, and others that are maybe like, just kind of that dynamic of like, just because this thing exists and like it's theoretically possible, maybe not necessarily the smartest thing for your career?
I might have a different viewpoint about it because I've represented artists with crazy ideas my entire career. And so I've had a lot of people pitch me ideas that certainly sounded like a pretty far-fetched notion. And then to see those clients deliver on that and have great success on that. So part of our job is to help clients achieve those dreams. And a lot of times those dreams are pretty out there. That being said,
but you have to put your people have to put a lot of time and energy into doing things that maybe you're, in your heart of hearts, are ill-advised.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not in the time-wasting business, of course, but we believe all these different artists have our job is to advocate on their behalf and help them strive for things that seem maybe crazy at the time that seem obvious later. That being said, the history we have, the expertise that we have in advising clients, I think should be valued because any of these different disciplines, they're all hard to be successful in. So a lot of it comes not from, the success doesn't come from the idea, it comes from the execution. And so where we see a lot of people not succeed is not because they're not talented or the idea itself is even flawed. It's the ability to execute with the bandwidth that so many of these people have. So if you're doing too much, it's hard to be excellent at anything. And I think the ones that we've seen, and I can point to a lot of different clients who've done it, they've really dedicated themselves to that mission. And by the way, sometimes there's still failure with that. But I can tell you that if you're unwilling to really immerse yourself and invest yourself fully in whatever the idea is, it's really hard to be successful. And that's incumbent upon us as their partners in business and their agents to be honest and straightforward about that.
You mentioned you could point to some clients. Do you mind citing a few clients that you feel like have really, not just sort of taken the check and phoned it in, but have really something new where they have fully invested themselves in it, even if it wasn't what they're known for?
I look at clients who utilize the full platform. I mean, I look at Nate Bargatze. Nate Bargatze is one of the biggest comedians in the world. He can sell out arenas every single night and has been doing that now for years. At the same time, he had a New York Times best-selling book last summer. He hosted the Emmys. He has a movie coming out, The Breadwinner, next month in May. He had a Super Bowl ad. He's got a game show that he's developing. I mean, this is someone who, the Tennessee kid, who is one of the greatest comedians of our generation, and he has all these other ideas, and our not obligation but opportunity is to help him get those things. And so that's really exciting. And if I had said, hey, he wants to do a movie, he wants to do a game show, he wants to have a best-selling book, he wants to host the Emmys, some of those things would have been at the time like, wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot
and he's pulling it off, and he's pulling it off beautifully. And we love that we get to be a part of that with him.
We're going to take a quick break, followed by more from my conversation with David. Let's talk about the corporate advisory business. We are a business publication. So
Sure.
You mentioned Coca-Cola, Eli Lilly. You mentioned a couple other corporate clients. Just in general, perhaps we can use this to segue into the AI part of our conversation, which we've barely touched on so far. But what's the general conversation right now in your conversations with your corporate clients? I mean, are they singularly sort of focused on trying to figure out how to adjust for an increasingly AI-fueled world? What are they excited about? What are they sort of seem most concerned about right now?
Well, I think that brands want to touch all parts of culture, right? They want to be at the center of culture. It's where they get some of their influence, and getting to their consumers the way they used to has obviously been disrupted with linear television changing, viewing habits changing, the competition for eyeballs. We, UTA, sit at the center of culture. And whether that's film and television, and whether that's music, and whether that's sports, or whether that's comedy, creators, etc., we can be the bridge for those brands who want to get to any and all of those things. We have a pretty good sense of what's going on in the market, not just what's hot and what's happening and but also what's over the horizon there, because that's part of our job is to know that. So we're able to leverage our capabilities in other areas to the advantage of those brands. And so all those brands want different things, and some of that has to do around events, around film, around television. How can we help activate them? How can we give them information? And I think with some of the disintermediation you've seen in the industry for them and ad agencies, we provide a really interesting and unique opportunity.
Let's talk about AI specifically. So one thing that I think is true across the board of the sort of overall AI conversation is that as soon as you think you are current or caught up, it's irrelevant and it changes again. I mean, the history of technology and tech platforms, sort of going back to the beginning of the internet, that dynamic has been in place to some degree, but it's accelerated in an extreme way right now. So when you talk to your talent about both the opportunities and the challenges of, say, using their voice for AI deals, where they can license their voice to a brand or a film or whatever it may be, or even video avatars of themselves, these kinds of things. What is talent sort of focused on right now? What's around the corner there? And kind of as those lines shift and things that once seemed oh, I can't do that. That's crazy. But except now, oh, well, 6 months ago that seemed crazy, but now it actually seems perfectly fine. Let's talk about it. Or let's at least consider it. Give us a sense of like where that conversation is right now.
It's a tricky conversation in that every client's different. And some people, I'll put them into three buckets. Some people are very concerned about AI. Some people aren't that concerned at all, and that they're actually embracing it and they're excited about what it brings. And some people just, I don't even think it's in their thinking. I know that's funny, but it's like, so all the clients are different. And so first and foremost, our job is to protect the clients, their work, their intellectual property, their name, image, and likeness. And so we've been trying through our AI task force, as I call it at UTA, which consists of a lot of people across the entire organization, to dig deeply and immerse themselves in the world of AI and what it means for our clients and what it doesn't mean. But our North Star is making sure we protect our clients' work and being able to talk to them about AI. I think that it's not a binary thing. It's not either good or bad. All technology that comes along,
Right.
and it certainly disrupts things, people get very nervous about, and then we get to the other side, and a lot of times those things end up being fantastic. I think that where we really come down for our clients and talent in particular, like you said, is it's about consent and compensation. AI is here to stay, and it's still early days. It's only going to get more and more and more refined, but it's really important for our clients to be able to give consent on how their name, image, likeness, their work is used, and there should be compensation for that to protect the work that they do.
Let's talk about the sort of effect on the Hollywood labor ecosystem. Obviously there's been multiple strikes in recent years. AI has been a major part of that conversation and that negotiation. When you look out at the landscape right now, what do you see in terms of both, I hate to keep asking on the challenges and opportunity side, but that's sort of the across the board reality of AI, right? Is that there's a lot of exciting upside, and then there's, of course, some potential damage that's going to come from that. So when you look at what people always talk about is the kind of like middle class of Hollywood, right? And how they've really been squeezed by a matrix of factors ranging from deals that were set up during the sort of like frothy, giddy kind of streaming boom period of the industry, and then the AI effect, all these things that are sort of, things aren't so bad if you're established and really big and everybody knows who you are. And maybe things aren't even necessarily so bad if you're young and really skillful in using the new tools to kind of break through the noise. But that sort of middle class that sort of has always been part of the fabric, and that they're the ones that feel most threatened. So when you look out at that, what's your take on the sort of healthiness or lack of healthiness of that category of people?
Well, I think you're right. The top layer of talent in any of these sectors are doing really, really well and doing great, and they have more opportunities than ever before. And Hollywood is a place that's been built on discovering new talent. Like almost any industry, the middle class is impacted, I think, in a more extreme way than those other two categories. I do think that we can't forget that there's more opportunity. I can just speak from the agency perspective. There's more opportunity for artists to try new and different things and get compensated for their specialness than ever before. And so part of our responsibility to those artists is to make sure we're aware of all the different avenues that are available to them, to continue to fight hard for those creative people to do their work. They're spending more on content than ever before in the history, And yes, it's diversified across different things in terms of whether it's sports, film, television, unscripted, international, etc. But that's the gig for us, which is the people that we represent deserve the full force of our capabilities at the agency, and that's what we do for them. And like I said earlier, we never ran around and said how easy it was to get everybody jobs and make better deals and all those kinds of things. And we've been going through this massive evolution in our industry for several years now. And here we are, and we're seeing great work and great movies and great TV shows. And so we're going to do everything we can to support the middle class and on either side of that. We have talked a lot at the agency for years now about how film and television and fashion and sports and music and brands were all colliding with one another. But it was happening pretty slowly for various reasons. I would say 5, 6 years ago, let's just say right around the beginning of the pandemic, you really started to see those things fall over each other in a good and exciting way. And I think we, UTA, were set up really well for that. But you also saw streaming wars come and kind of subside. You saw some consolidation. You saw some strikes. So we get to the other side of it and we see there's not quite as many studios as there once were. There's not the same streaming wars that there once was. And you've seen, though, at the same time, all these different sectors all come together. And so we're now coming out the other side of the strikes are over. Obviously, the Writers Guild just ratified a new contract, which is very exciting, and that's a 4-year deal. So that's really exciting. The box office.
And that sort of went a lot easier than people thought it might go.
It did. Yeah. It did.
Why do you think that was?
I think people didn't have an appetite for a strike given everything that's going on. I think the last strike, which was actually a double strike, the first double strike in about 60 years, was painful for both sides. And so I think it was really important for both sides to get what they needed, but do it in a way that didn't take us to the brink again. And so I'm applaud both sides for getting that done and getting it done so quickly and early, because those things can have an impact whether or not you have a strike if you get up right to the line. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and there's been these peaks and valleys in the past few years. Been a little bit in the valleys with the pandemic and the strikes and the end of streaming wars and the consolidation. But I'm feeling very bullish and excited about the future. I see, the box office is up almost, I think, 25% year over year. You're seeing some of the greatest shows. This past award season with things like a White Lotus and The Studio and Hacks and Adolescence, all different shows we're a part of. The genius work that's being done on television. It's going to be a big movie year. I think we're going to, we may not get quite to 2019 levels, but we're going to get close at the domestic box office, which is pretty incredible. And I think these opportunities, what the world is seeing, who creators aren't, it's not a fad. It's not a trend. It's here. It is absolutely here to stay. What's going on in the world of sport and what's going on with music. I think a lot of people thought there was this bounce back post-pandemic that live was going to have this moment and then would subside. That has not been our experience at all. Our comedians are out like crazy, and whether that's Nate, who I mentioned, or Sebastian Maniscalco, or Nikki Glazer, Taylor Tomlinson, Matt Rife, etc., or the musical acts, which are filling out arenas not just here but all over the world. And technology has lent itself to the success of some of these sectors. I think technology has opened the world's eyes to, or ears, to certain musicians they otherwise wouldn't have listened to. It's opened the world's eyes to these comedians. So the live business is also a really exciting thing, and it seems like sports has no cap. There's no ceiling.
It's crazy.
With what's going on.
And the prices are just, for the live experience. This is, I would say, a problem that has to do with the inelastic supply of seats, especially good ones, at live events, and the sheer number of people that can afford to pay $40,000 to sit courtside at a Knicks playoff game. And everybody else, Springsteen tickets, just, berserk. The World Cup, there was viral news recently about $150 train fare from wherever, Port Authority, to get out to the Giant Stadium, whatever they're calling it these days, for the final. These insane kind of pricing dynamics, which are an unfortunate byproduct of that. But it is surprising. I agree with you that the live thing has just been so durable. I also thought that there was going to be kind of a cathartic return to stadiums and other live venues, and then that would probably subside, partly because of how expensive it is, but partly just because people would go, that was fun, but I don't need to do that often. That hasn't happened. It just keeps going. It's almost like this is a little bit of speculative mass psychology, but it's almost like people spend so much time in the digital world that when they go out into the real world, they go out with a vengeance,
That's exactly.
Especially young people.
That's exactly right. I think that we talk about this a lot. What people are willing to pay for experiences. Coachella, which just celebrated its 27th year, it had the biggest turnout in the history of Coachella, 27 years. later. Our client, Carol G, headlined both Sunday nights, and it's spectacular. People want to be with other people. That's why I still believe in movie theaters. There's a lot more competition, for those eyeballs, and people, yes, can watch it at home and they're distracted by their phones or other things they can be doing, video games, etc. But I feel like we're having this nice buildup again. We got to put good movies in the theaters and people will come. Whether it's an author, whether it's a creator, like a Mel Robbins is going on tour, whether it's Alex Cooper going on tour, whether it's all these different people that we represent, more people want to get closer to the things they care about. And they'll pay a price, like you said, like outlandish prices for some of these things.
Yeah.
But people want to attend events where they feel like they're part of culture and they're part of something. And I feel like that's what we're seeing, but I don't think that's going away, even though we're 5-6 years past the pandemic.
Let's go back to the streaming wars for a second, because you said a couple things in that conversation that I would love to sort of just drill down on a little bit. So streaming wars, I think you said, are over. I'll give you a chance to kind of nuance that a bit if you want. Netflix obviously has been incredibly adaptive and has made some very smart pivots over the course of their entire existence, kind of looking around the corner and just being right about where things are going next. They have obviously been one of the main winners. There's the Disney Plus piece of it. But, be an industry historian, writing in 50 years into the future, what are a few sentences that sort of capture who won and who didn't win? I won't say lost. I recognize that you're the head of a talent agency that's got to work with all of these players. But how do you summarize the who won the streaming wars?
And let me clarify, when I say the streaming wars have ended or subsided, there was this moment in time where Netflix was the streamer, the only streamer. And then in a very short period of time, we saw Amazon, we saw Apple, we saw Peacock, we saw Paramount Plus, we saw Disney Plus. You saw all these companies all at once say, we have this whole new platform that we have to feed. And they did. And on top of it, it was happened to coincide roughly with the pandemic, where everybody was at home watching everything that they could get their hands on, their eyes on. And so as the pandemic ended, as those companies got their sea legs, things settled down a bit in terms of the competition is still there. They're still going after as much good stuff as they can possibly get and lock down talent and make overall deals and all those kinds of things. But it would just happen to be this one moment in time where they were all coming out of the gate as fast and strong as they could and trying to establish themselves as we're real. We're a real streamer. And so that's what I meant when I said the streaming wars ended. Now, the good news is all those groups that I mentioned, they're still here. Their business plans shifted a little bit here and there. We're seeing some consolidation. We'll see what happens with, Paramount and Warner's and things like that. But look, I think Netflix still has the biggest subscriber service of all of them. But the other ones seem to be growing really, really well. And they're all a little bit different from one another. I think Disney is more specific than Netflix, is different than what Peacock's doing, is different than what Amazon is doing. So, or what Apple is doing. So, and I also think, it's not an SVOD service, but what Tubi's doing, which has, I believe, over 100 million subscribers now. So, I mean, I know it's free.
And Tubi was what I was when I paused earlier and said, let me ask that later. They seem to be offering some interesting opportunities for creators that are different than what they are able to get on the traditional places like YouTube and TikTok.
Yes. Oh, for sure. A lot of this has been exploratory and experimental, right? Netflix was a place that was never going to have ads. They have ads. Amazon has ads. Peacock has ads. And so I also think these services are evolving in that they're learning some people will pay extra for no ads. Some people don't care about ads at all. Tubi obviously is an ad service. That's the way people watch television for,
it's sort of just
decades.
Regular television with like a much more robust channel guide.
Right. And the old system worked pretty well back then. Right. So, we always talk about that people now want to have the ability to watch what they want, when they want, where they want, and all those kinds of things. And that's true. And so pricing has to be thrown into that. And for some people, the people who are spending $40,000 on floor seats at the Knicks game, they don't care about pricing. But most people do. And these services are now providing an opportunity for them to
cheaper if you have ads.
To get access to great content at a relatively low price.
Let's talk about the Warner Paramount situation and what that's going to do to that is consolidation. You mentioned consolidation earlier. Obviously, you have one iconic studio acquiring another iconic studio. David Ellison has sort of been saying all the right things about theatrical window and how many films he's going to release and all of that. So what is your sense of sort of what this is going to do to the volume of films that are really going to get made? How are you preparing your agents for it? And how are you preparing your clients for it?
Yeah. Well, first, obviously, as agents, we like to have more options, not less. We want more studios.
You want more bidders.
Not less. We need these companies to be healthy.
Yeah.
Look, if David Ellison can make 30 movies a year, which he's committed to many, many times now, that would be fantastic. I think it's hard. It's hard to put 30 movies together, but that's
reality intrudes, and this gets bumped, and that gets bumped, and
it's just very difficult to put a lot of movies like that together. So the good news is when I first joined the agency, half the companies that I covered as a young agent, meaning like I was responsible for figuring out what they were doing, who they wanted to hire, what they were going to make, half those companies don't even exist anymore. Netflix wasn't here, Apple TV wasn't here, Amazon wasn't here, Paramount Plus wasn't, and so they're with certain doors closing, other doors open up. And I do believe that our industry, like I was saying, has gone through so much. And so although I'd like to see Warner's and Paramount be standalone companies, the same way I'd like to see Disney and Fox, I'm also a realistic person. That's just not the world we're living in right now. So we're going to do everything we can to be innovative about not just working with all those companies and getting the most, out of those companies that we can on behalf of our clients, but also being innovative about where else can we be getting our clients to do really interesting work. And I think, I was just yesterday, I was over at A24. A24 didn't exist. They're turning into a really interesting film and television company, and they're doing really interesting work, and clients are really drawn to companies like that. I think that there's a lot of doors opening for different types of companies that are coming up. What's the next move for YouTube? What's the next move for Tubi? So I think that as long as our clients continue to do good work, which they will, there's going to be a place for their content and the work that they do. And I think being special and original, which has always been critical of the success of artists, we're always going to find a home for that person.
Let's talk about leadership. We talked about it a little bit when I asked you about, how you kind of like manage the AI transformation. What is your leadership philosophy in general, and how do you apply that to the day-to-day running of UTA?
I like to think that I lead by example. I mean, all the basic stuff, right? Show up, hard work, be thoughtful, be disciplined, be consistent. I also think I'm very fortunate. I've been at the company for over 30 years. I have a tremendous credibility with the people that I work with. I like to think. I think that you got to practice what you preach. You got to constantly be learning and being curious, and that's how the company has grown the way it has. And I think people see you show up that way. I also think it's important to be honest with your people. Your people have to trust you. They have to trust your words. They have to trust your intentions. And you earn that over time. It also earns your way into having not just good conversations, but difficult conversations. And I think if you're not having difficult conversations with people you work with, you're not being honest with them. And I think that also, lastly, I would say, not acting like you have all the answers. Asking, not like you're never always going to get consensus, right? But asking others their point of view, letting them be part of the process. Ultimately, you got to make the decision, and the decision rests with you. But I think it's really important for people to feel part of the process and not decisions being handed down. The good thing about me is I'm not asking anybody at UTA to do something I haven't done myself. I was in the mailroom. I was an assistant. I was an agent. I was a department head. I did all these different jobs. I still represent clients to this day. And so I think it's really important to show up for your people. They'll show up for you. And if you can have real conversations, you are more effective as a leader. And your people also need to know, lastly, that you don't expect them to succeed with everything they do. I never learned anything from winning.
Right.
Falling flat on your face, taking risks is part of the gig. And if you're afraid to do that, you're not going to be a very successful company or a successful executive. And I think that I try to encourage my people to go with their instincts and try things and not fear failure. If you don't fear failure, you're going to find some great success.
David Kramer, thanks so much for joining us. I really have enjoyed the conversation and appreciate you coming to the studio.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it.
Office Hour is part of the Fast Company Podcast Network. Our show is produced by Josh Christensen, editing by Matt Toder, mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres. Be sure to subscribe to Office Hour on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. You can also hear all episodes in the Most Innovative Companies podcast feed. If you like this podcast, leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice, or let us know in the comments of Fast Company's social media.